All right, with the tough news about Joel Embiid now having the emergency surgery on Thursday, and the Sixers with the now 2 games remaining on the campaign in the play-in, 5-6 look like it's out at this point. We need to talk about now what we've discussed: Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey, their job security because of everything with the season and where they are. Kyle, does this kind of save Nick Nurse and the seat that we talked about has been really, really warm? Has it cooled off a little bit now? Because going into the postseason, just like we talked about it being out of Joel Embiid's control, this is out of Nick Nurse's control, and he is left to work with what he does have. And they are a little compromised with some of the things with Tyrese Maxey in the finger right now, all that stuff. But does this put him in a different spot now going into the postseason and then the offseason?
I think it might, and I think there are a couple reasons behind that. Number one, I think by building around Joel specifically, that is primarily a Daryl Morey decision. And so if a decision on Nick Nurse has to come from up above, I don't know that Daryl Morey in this instance has enough cachet to be like, hey, this guy lost in the first round, or this guy's knocked out in the play-in tournament. We haven't been good enough. But a big reason that we haven't been good enough is because the guy that I decided to tie the franchise to, the guy that I extended, is injured or ill or can't play yet again, because you're basically saying my failure is a big reason why he can't get it done, but we should still fire him. Like, I think that's a tougher sell for him to make. I also think, frankly, it is a genuine excuse on a lot of levels, right? Like, I wouldn't even call it's a genuine reason that they can't beat a Detroit, a Boston, a New York, even a Cleveland in first round of the playoffs, depending on if seeding flips at all. If you don't have Joel Embiid, every indicator we have is that they can't compete with and they cannot beat good teams. They go from an elite offensive team with him on the floor to one that is close to bottom third in the league, which that's just not going to be good enough to beat playoff defenses. Their defense isn't all that good with or without him. So their path to winning is through Joel. And so if they lose early, and the justification to move on from Nurse is we lost early, I think that's a little bit unfair to him. I still think, based on the body of work, based on the fact that he was brought in to advance them further, to try to take a team that was stuck at a certain level past that level, and now you can't even get back to that level. You can't even reach that level. I think as an organization is justification enough, but I think there are reasons now that you could punt on this decision and say, this is something you decide later.
So I think, the justification for him staying would be, when Joel plays, they're playing at like a 50-win pace. But that's true for every coach Joel has ever played for. Every time he's been on the court, with the exception of maybe his rookie year, the team has played at a 50-win pace. That alone, he's a good enough player. You and I could coach. All right, maybe not quite, but a competent NBA coach can step in there and win 50 games. So to me, there has to be a higher bar than that. And even if you look at when they were healthy, like lineups with your 4 stars have a negative point differential. That should never happen. This team has not reached, even when they're healthy, has not reached a level I think most people would look at. And then you look at, all right, well, his scheme, does it make sense? I don't think it does. Has he adjusted well enough? I don't think he does. He has. Have they been able to claw out games when undermanned? I don't think they've done a good enough job of that, like you did maybe with Doc Rivers, just to compare him to his predecessor. But I think even beyond the basketball, if you're going to look at the fan base, because we can talk about it, and I'm sure we will talk about it, especially if we have a long offseason. If you're going to, it's going to be hard to move Joel Embiid because everybody else in the league sees that he hasn't played a whole lot of basketball these last 2 years. He's got a monster contract. It's going to be hard to move Paul George. If you are going to look at it and say, hey, fans, we're going to run it back, even if it's not fair, that's a real tough sell.
Yeah.
And look, Morey, Nurse, they're owed money. I think they both have 2 years left on a contract. But if you're going to ask fans, hey, buy season tickets for us next year, you've got to change
Even
something.
just watch us on TV next year.
Something has to change. We've said it time and time again. The coach is almost always the easiest lever to pull, easiest change to make. That's why I think, clearly he has not been dealt a perfect hand. It's not really fair because he's gotten Embiid for so little after that first year in Philly. But fair doesn't even really matter. Like, there's a business aspect to it too. I do think it would be tough for Morey to get a chance to hire another coach, but I also think it would be tough to ask the fans to buy in on running this core back.
And he already has a short list of supporters when it comes to the fan base. For us sitting here doing this job, we hear it all the time that there are not a lot of Nick Nurse fans when it comes to a selling point again of him. And I was the one, I think the most, that was saying, look, man, there was nothing he can do after year one. Going into year number two, because of after Embiid came back from the Olympics, he wasn't right. Then the Paul George injuries just kept happening. At the end, Tyrese Maxey, of course, Jared McCain is lost in December of his rookie year. You don't have a lot. What is he supposed to do? Now, this year, I'll say this part and then I'll ask a question off of what you both said. The first thing is there are going to be some trends that we talk about. Joel Embiid on the floor or not. Why are the third quarters the way that they were all season long? It wasn't a 2-month thing that they figured out. That was a 82-game thing that became a huge problem that may have added some wins to the season had that not been an issue all season long. With that, some of the transition defense things that we talked about all season long again, is that his scheme? Why is it not an adjustment there? Or are they not listening to him with these two things that the players are not responding to whatever he's selling? And then finally, when you both mentioned the Morey piece of it, how much of it, and I'll ask you guys this, how much when coach and president of basketball operations, when they communicate about type of player that they want, that they're both responsible for what this roster looks like outside of course, Embiid. I'll just say outside of Embiid, Maxey, and even Edgecombe. I'll exclude Paul George is in there too because he was a free agent pickup at big money. How much of that is also Nurse with Morey in choosing the players that are currently on this roster, and as we see, not good enough to advance back to where you said.
I think it's definitely part of it, Devon, because if you just look at the types of guys that are on this roster and look at the types of guys who are on Toronto's roster toward the end of that run, it's not that dissimilar. Toronto had more of those guys that were like the long 6'8", athletic, can't really shoot type of player. This team is not as big, but play the same. And so I think you can criticize Daryl for this too, by the way. Like, okay, if I hired this coach, this is my guy that I'm getting behind, I'm making this decision, I commit to him, then of course, if this coach wants to play a certain way and you were already bought in enough to hire him, you're going to give him the players that he is saying, like, I need these types of guys. Like, these types of players will succeed in my system. So it's not just Nurse's fault, but certainly if Nurse is having a level of input and is helping to shape the roster decisions, it's a little tougher to then be like, oh, well, this didn't go well, so it can't be the coach's fault, right? Like, obviously you can't plan around people being hurt or Paul George being suspended for 25 games out of the clear blue sky, right? Like that you certainly can't pin on him, but that is definitely part of it for sure.
No, and I definitely think with the role players, like, it doesn't make sense to go out and acquire role players if your coach isn't going to play them. I think the coaches tend to have an oversized role in, what style of role player, what style of supporting cast you're going to go out there and get.
Especially when we talk about 3 players on the roster to start the year, where it's Lowry, Drummond, and Gordon. Those are big roster spots that we talk about now. They're short on talent overall on the roster. You're relying on a certain number of players to do something. And 3 plus the empty spot that Derek, you always talk about, the 15th spot that they don't use. That's huge. So that goes to the coach, and then it goes to the president of basketball operations as well. And that's where things are going to come down to a big conversation in the offseason, depending on how things finish off for this group.
Yeah,
so.
And you look at other rosters, and the teams that are real contenders are not burning roster spots like that. Like they're not using 2 and 3 different roster spots on guys that you really don't want to play unless you're forced to play them at the start of the year. Like that's just not a good place to be.
No, it's not great. Not great at all. All right, that'll do it for us here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe to the show. Leave a comment about Nurse, about Morey, about the personnel that's on the roster right now. Maybe you think we're all crazy and that they are going to make a run in the playoffs, and then Joel Embiid is going to come back in the second round, and they're going to be good to go. I don't know.
I'll have what you're having if that's what you think.
However you feel, let us know. Again, like, subscribe, leave a comment, spread the word, tell a friend and tell another friend that we are here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. Our network continues to grow. We really appreciate all of your support, and we want to keep moving in the right direction as we talk about the Sixers, Flyers, Eagles, and the Phillies all year around here on the PHLY network. For Bree, Derek, and Kyle, I'm Devon. We'll see you next time here on the PHLY Sixers podcast.